Conceive, believe, achieve.
This is former UFC middleweight champion of the world, Michael Bisping.
Paddy the Baddy here. You're listening to Combat Sports UK.
And you're watching Combat Sports UK.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Combat Sports UK YouTube channel. We're bringing a special episode for you today of the podcast. It's Taylor Collard and I'm joined here with the Octagon Oracle himself, Nathan Shields, fresh from a trip to the north. Yes, I know he lives in Yorkshire anyway, but he's gone further north. He went up to Newcastle for Octagon 52. How was the experience overall, mate? What did you think of the Great North?
Unbelievable, mate. We actually stopped in a little Airbnb in Roker. So just sort of Sunderland area. It was about half an hour from the arena. So turned up there, like I said, got there in the evening for the press conference. That was just unbelievable, just to be that close to the action, see these guys just live and in person. We'll come on to it in a bit. The big standout was that Mate Peñas is absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just surreal, mate, to just be part of it. And just when you're a fan of this game anyway, to actually go and be involved in the way that I was involved at the weekend it's like a dream come true. So I just soaked it all in and enjoyed every minute. And then obviously the event on Saturday night, I spent Saturday daytime with the family, having a bit of walks along the beach and getting some rocks and shells with a little one. And then I took them back, got washed, changed, and straight out to the arena for the fights, and it delivered, man. The fights, even the ones that went to points, there wasn't a boring fight in there particularly. So it was just unbelievable. And then seeing all the guys after, you get a real close connection with them. Just the time they've given you and the respect they've shown you when you just kind of you're nobody to them, but you've turned up and you kind of giving them the exposure, and on the most part they all were very respectful about it. So I can't thank all the athletes enough and the Octagon staff for making it happen and helping us along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I've been banging their drum since obviously before we started the podcast. I mean, my first event with them was April last year over in Oberhausen here in Germany, which ironically enough is the one they've got coming up next. So I'll be there in a couple of weeks. And just to show, I think what surprised me the most, I'm pretty sure you'll echo this as well, is the scale of the show that they put on. When you compare it to, I've been to a couple of UFC events as well myself. The production level is there. Obviously, yeah. I think what's next to come for them in the UK is to build that big fan base. And start getting these arenas, really, really sold out and really packed, like they do over here. Over here, I was talking back and forth with somebody the other day saying, we were talking about the Manchester Octagon card that didn't quite do the numbers they wanted it to. But then 2 weeks later in Cologne, they filled out the biggest stadium in Germany, or the biggest indoor arena in Germany, which was 18,500 people. So it's just, you can see what they're trying to do and you can see where they're going with it. But I think once that atmosphere catches up to the fights, it will be really, really something. And then they've got Birmingham later this year. And it'll be a hell of a show. And I think they want to do a lot more in the UK. They're building up a lot of the UK fights.
Yeah, well, they talked on it. I think Birmingham won't be the last show that we get in the UK this year either. I think there's probably going to be a couple more. They've already talked about doing one in Liverpool, although that seemed like they were talking about a stadium. Because they were sort of saying, as far as the arena, as they called it, was concerned, there was a few issues surrounding it. And they said where we want to go. That was straight from Andre, I think. So,
I mean, that being said, they are doing a football stadium. I think they're doing Slavia Prague. No, Slavia, one of the Czech teams, and they've sold out. They did 15,000 tickets in under an hour when the tickets went on sale, and that's a 30,000 seat stadium they're going to do. So that's the scale of what they're looking to go. I mean, hell of a promotion. If you can get to Birmingham, definitely do. But we're going to break down this fight card. I was watching it from home, updating the live results. Obviously, Nathan, you were there in person. How was the quality overall? We'll go down fight by fight as much as we can, but how do you rate the quality overall compared to what you were expecting?
Well, I mean, I came into the MMA space off the back of boxing. So when I came into MMA to me was the UFC. I was aware of Cage Warriors, obviously being more of a local regional scene for us. But it was, do you know what, mate? These fights, we talk about it all the time in boxing. If you put the right person against the right person, you will normally get a good fight, and regardless of kind of the skill level, you will always get a good outcome. And most of these fights were very, very well matched to the point where the styles played off. I will talk about them in more detail as we go through, but the quality of the fighters, I mean, we'll come on to speak about one in particular. And you already, well, there's a couple actually, but one in particular, I'm going to talk about that just absolutely blew me away because the level I was looking at, I was thinking this guy can hang anywhere.
Mm.
So it was great, mate. We're watching the fights, we were right up there next to the cage, and it was just like you said, it just needs that full arena to start cheering on. But the more they come to the UK, the more people realise that you're gonna have to sell your house to buy a ticket to the UFC, or you can buy a ticket for 35 quid and go and watch Octagon. It's a no-brainer, mate. It's it's pocket money, 35 quid at the end of the day to go and actually have a full night's entertainment on 35 quid. All right, you've got to get there. You've got to, if you want a drink or a bite to eat or whatever, but it's as far as MMA goes, it's cheap as chips for what they actually put on for you.
Yeah, and I mean, with them doing so many locations, it's going to be easier to go a bit more local. I mean, we're already getting two in the first quarter of this year with Birmingham and Newcastle. Should we jump straight in with the main event and then kind of we can flow a little bit, see where we want to go? Jonas Magaard picks up a unanimous decision against Jack Rat Tail. Nathan only asked the serious questions. Cartwright. What do we make of this fight? I thought Cartwright he looked a couple of steps behind Magaard. Was that the impression you got?
It was a tricky one, mate, and I messaged all the fighters, win or lose, after the event. Actually, sent them all a private message just to say either condolences, but thanks for all your time, or congratulations, and echo the same sentiment. And I actually got a message from Jack, and I'd sent him one saying sorry about the hair question, and he said, "Nah, don't be silly. It's not the everyday haircut, and happy days will be back sort of thing." And Jack was brilliant in the build up to this at selling the fight, and I favoured him going in probably. I flipped and flopped a little bit, but as we kind of got there, I was thinking when I arrived in Newcastle, I fancied Jack. And I saw the weigh-ins, and Jonas looked so drawn. Like, the jaw was just, he looked absolutely like he got nothing left to cut. But then when I saw him at the press conference in the evening, Jack looked a little bit like he'd rather be anywhere else. And I think that told in kind of a lot of his answers and stuff. I think he just wanted to get back and get hydrated and get some snap in him. And whereas Jonas had filled out completely. And I think when we actually saw them fight, it echoed that a little bit. I thought when they first came out, I thought Jack thought he'd have the advantage on the feet. And I think we were only about 5 to 10 seconds into the bout, and Jonas caught him with a massive right hand.
Yeah.
Now, we spoke to Jack afterwards, and Jack basically said, he's seen it on camera, and sometimes he has a tendency of looking a little clumsy, but he was not hurt. But to me, it looked like it was a big shot. And I think from that moment on, Jack found his feet. He came into it a little bit more. He was landing and having a bit more success on the feet. But as soon as that happened, Jonas knew he'd sucked him in, and they just took the takedowns. And then once he got Jack on his back, he just couldn't do anything with him. Jonas was aware that the submission threat was there from Jack, so he didn't do anything too spectacular or too dangerous. He just secured the win. Jack was frustrated afterwards. You could see that because he'd wanted it to be a bit more of a fight. And I think he felt like Jonas had kind of played it a little safe. But Jonas picked up the win, and comfortably so. So, not too much more.
I think it was very evident from watching it on TV that Jonas looked like he had the power advantage. And it just, every time he hit Jack kind of took a couple of steps back. And I think he did look a little bit rocked at times. Whether he was or wasn't, only he knows, really.
Yeah.
And you could just see that Jonas kind of had a bit more feel, a bit more power behind his punches. I mean, it probably sets him up really well for that title rematch against the Lima, which I'd really like to see. I think Jack's going to be there and thereabouts as well. I mean, he's proved that he's capable of hanging in this division. That only takes him to 11-2, and he's got a lot a lot of good things in his game. Maybe he does need to sort out that weight cut a little bit. Maybe that was a little bit of something to do with it.
Yeah.
Would like to have seen it maybe go 5 rounds. I didn't realize until they played it out there that there was only 3. So it would have been nice to see that. But I couldn't see the fight going any differently if it had done.
Well, just on that, in OKTAGON's defense, we actually asked that in private to Pavel and Andre. What they basically said was that they would have a 5-round main event, but this wasn't meant to be the original main event on this card. So they'd signed the contracts for 3 rounds before it got made the main event. So
probably AB and Garcia.
So they were saying because of that they'd already signed the contracts and they just left it at the 3. So I think going forward it will be a 5-round main event from OKTAGON.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Let's jump into the co-main event. I know you want to you're on a run wild on this guy. I mean, who doesn't? What a performance! Mate Peña's defeat Matthew Bonner, the first one to stop him by TKO in round number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Peñas he's a bit like Drago insofar as he looks like he's been made in a factory somewhere. He's just chiseled to the nines. He was actually bigger than Sir Stuart Austin and Adam Palash. That in the press conference, if you look at my footage and everything that we took from there, Jordan was adjusting my camera for the heavyweights, but when Peñas came on, he actually had to move it back up further because his head was out of the picture. The guy's absolutely massive, but he's an incredible athlete. And what I will say on the back of this as well is Matthew Bonner is just an absolute top guy.
He's lovely, isn't he?
He was great with his time. He's very professional. He's very softly spoken. Like if he had a long sleeve t-shirt on and you couldn't see the tattoos and everything else, you wouldn't even think he was a fighter.
Absolutely.
But when he came into that press conference, mate, and I didn't want to ask him any questions because he was just battered. He was in a real mess. And I said to Jordan, I said, he looks to me like this was during the fight. I said, he looks hurt everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the legs were chopped up, the body was sore, the head was, all bust up. And Matty Peñas was just patient. And Bonner did exactly what he had to do. He went in there, he tried to make it ugly, he tried to get in close and, impact some wrestling top game on Peñas, and he just couldn't get him down. The takedown defense, for such a big guy, the takedown defense is phenomenal because he just spreads his legs really far apart against the cage, and it makes it tricky for him to be taken down. But then the mixture to go head, body, kicks, high kicks, body. You don't see a lot of body shot finishes in MMA. And I don't know why more people don't go for it, but Matt Bonner's been in there with everybody and no one's ever stopped him.
Mm-hmm.
And that tells you that he's got a hell of a chin on him. So what did Peñas do? He ripped the body.
Yeah. He's got the skills to do everywhere. It as well.
And he ripped the body. This kid is an absolute diamond. And to be fair, it was the only fight I got up. I walked over to Scott from OKTAGON and I said to Scott, he's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
What a phenomenal fighter. And Scott said, I just smiled and said, I know, we've got big plans. So, he's just phenomenal, mate. Like I said, the one thing that stood out, and there's one fighter in particular I want to apply this to, but there's so many I could. Matthew Bonner's one of them.
Yeah.
The class that they show in defeat and the attitude that they've got to come and sit up in front of everybody, beat to shit, basically, bloody and bleeding and everything else, and sit there, answer questions and give our time. They're just phenomenal athletes and phenomenal human beings, mate. You can't say that for every MMA fighter, but these guys at the weekend were class. Yeah.
I honestly couldn't believe how soft-spoken and how well-natured Matthew Bonner was when I met him in Cologne and I interviewed him backstage. I was like, are you the same dude that just fought out there, by the way? Like, he's absolutely lovely. And I completely echo what you said. I mean, Mate Peñas is now 9-0 with OKTAGON. His only loss is that Contender Series loss in the UFC. And I mean, it could
same
be
again. Scott said on that. Scott said if he has that Contender Series fight again, he wins that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, absolutely,
It's just
absolutely.
it was just one of those things, and I honestly think we will see him in the UFC in the not too distant future. I really
And I
do.
mean, that's the nature of the Contender Series, isn't it? It's just one of those that can go that way.
Yeah.
He's going to do big things in Octagon, definitely. Like, or if you just anyone in that division, you're looking at him after that fight, and you're like, oh, I'm just got to
There's
avoid him
nobody
like the
sticking their hand
plague.
up to fight him. Nobody.
No, 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 no. And I mean the champ in that
And
division. I'm just going to have a little look. I can't remember who it is in the middleweight division at the moment. But you got to think. Obviously, that's going to be that's got to be the next fight for Pena. There's no other fight you can really do
you
after that,
know,
right?
there's no point in putting him in another fight, Taylor. That's the thing with it. There's no point. He is the number one contender.
Yeah,
To rip through Matthew Bonner the way that he did, he's the guy. So he needs to be next. He
yeah.
won the bonus as well, got one vote more than Stuart Austin, which Santa Stewart wasn't too pleased about, I don't think. But it was €5,000 extra in the pocket. I don't think Jake
Yeah,
McHugh was too pleased either, but still.
he was going for that bonus. I mean, it's interesting what they do. They've got Patrick Kinsler, who's also Octagon's pound for pound number one. You've got an interim champ there as well. You've got Kerry Menzies on top of Peñas, who just dropped out of his fight against Scott Atkin, but they're saying it's not
Mhm.
too bad. They're probably going to rebook that.
Yeah.
So, oof, yeah, I mean, it could be a little bit of waiting if they're
I
gonna have to unify the belts. With Octagon, it's always a bit
yeah.
unpredictable. You never really
Put
know
it this
what's going to happen.
way, the champion and the interim champion are only temporary, and we'll
Yeah,
leave it at that
yeah,
because
this
this
guy.
kid's coming and he's going to take it all. He is
This kid's
unbelievably talented, mate.
yeah, yeah. Next one, with the champion as kind of a placeholder. A lot of talk going towards this division. It's quite exciting. It's quite fun. Is Aaron Abbey.
Yep.
I thought it was a
Golden
really
balls
brilliant
himself.
performance. Golden balls himself. I thought it was such a brilliant performance. I thought that was a real statement performance. It can always be tricky fights when you're taking these kind of fights. It's always that kind of risk. I remember one that sticks in my mind is Joanne Calderwood. She took a fight against, I can't remember who it was, but she was due a title shot. She just had a title shot that had just fallen out against Valentina. And she took a fight and then she got battered. I can't remember who it was, but she got battered. And you always wonder with these kind of fights, Aaron Abbey's right there. You know, he could wait. He
Mhm.
could wait out this Garcia fight until Birmingham. You know, Andre said it in the press conference. But for him to go
Yeah.
out there and put on that kind of performance, especially round 2 and 3, unbelievable, right?
Mate, there was a lot of questions asked in the post fight. You know, the pre-fight we talked about Elias Garcia, and it was echoed again that if Elias Garcia didn't pick up the phone and agree to fight Aaron Abbey or Christopher Daniel next, whoever was to win this fight,
Mm-hmm.
then he would be stripped as champion. And that was the echoed throughout the week. It was spoken about in numerous interviews. It was said on the Friday. It was said on the Saturday. And I'm not going to get any favors from the champ here, but I think Christopher Daniel beats Elias Garcia, mate, and I think he does so relatively comfortably. I thought
Yeah.
Christopher Daniel was exceptionally good. He was just beaten by a better man.
Yeah.
And Aaron Abbey, again, class all the way through it. Press conference, came up, thanked me, shook my hand, thanked for the time and, you know, the questions and everything else. I mean, one of the questions I asked in the post-fight press conference to Andre and Pavel was, Elias Garcia might have the belt, but this guy's the champion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Aaron Abbey basically said, yeah, that's the way he sees it. He sees it as he's defending the belt.
Yeah.
He's carrying the division as the champion. And if Elias Garcia is not ready, then he'll fight whoever he needs to get his hand on the gold. And to be honest with you, mate, he's just inspirational to be
Yeah.
around because
Completely.
he's such a classy guy. Like even after the fight, you know, his eye was all busted up. He got ice taped to his leg. He was, you know, he was battered and bruised here, there, and everywhere. And he walked out. He was with his friends and family and everything else. And he actually split off from the pack and came over and sort of shook my hand and said thank you and everything else, and said that everyone's been great this week. And he's dropped me a couple of messages since as well. The kid's just absolute dynamite. He's class. But Christopher Daniel was a little bit of a sore loser at the press conference afterwards. A
Mm.
little bit like, I think he took a bit of umbrage with something I said, actually, because I said it was another dominant victory for Aaron Abbey, and I think he took that a bit personally. But he did say, he said, well, it wasn't dominant because after 2 rounds, it would, it was right there. It was 29-28 across the board, so it wasn't dominant. But yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was
was.
a bit.
I mean, to be fair, that's
But
actually a bit of just a tangent question, real quick. How did they do the open scoring in the arena? Was it just on the screen, or did they
yeah, it
announce
was
it
on the
somehow on the screen?
yeah,
Okay.
no, it was on the screens. What they basically had is either side of the arena, they got a bit like in a hockey match or something like that. They've got big screen up at the top that side, big screen at the top behind you. So where I was sat, I was looking straight up at a sign, but had I turned round, there was another one right up
Another one
there,
right
and
there.
it would
Yeah.
just show the judges and how they scored the first round, and then what the scores were after the second,
Nice.
etc. And then it just left obviously the third until the decision. But Aaron Abbey, mate, he's just so strong because he was in there and he looked small in comparison. When they were actually in the grappling exchanges, Christopher Daniel would be in a quite a dominant position, and Aaron Abbey
Mm.
would just throw him off.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, how strong is this kid? To have the issues with the cancer and the cystic fibrosis and everything else that this kid's gone through, he's just an unbelievable. He's inspirational, mate. It really was.
Yeah.
I honestly, he's the one I took the most away from this week because he's just for him to do what he does, behave the way he does, fight the way he does. It's just he shouldn't be able to do it, and yeah, he does.
Yeah.
And he is the champion in waiting. He's been referred to as Golden Balls all week. And we're going to roll into Birmingham, and Aaron Abbey will get that belt, whether Elias Garcia comes back or not.
Yeah, that's always going to be the one. I mean, he's turned up. He's done what he needed to do. Like I said, I think it was such a great performance that second and third round. And he's absolutely inspirational. I mean, just his fight style. He doesn't cut much weight, so he is basically walking around at 125. Daniel, I think, cuts a little bit to get down. It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do it. I think it's going to be Abbey's crowning glory in Birmingham. He's definitely going to pick up the belt. I mean, he beat Elias Garcia. I was in the arena at the time. I've watched it back.
Yeah.
I'm under no illusions that he beat Garcia, obviously, but with the cut, it is what it is. So on to the next one, which is another kind
Stuart
of
Austin.
pathway to gold. All of the good thing about these fights is a lot of them have had jeopardy on them. Every single fight meant something.
Yeah.
And they really, really brought out a good card. Stuart Austin, kind of elbowing from nowhere and then into an arm triangle submission over Adam Palazaz. I mean, if you're going to go for a belt in a heavyweight division in a promotion like Octagon, that is how you do it. You go out and you get a finish, especially after his first fight. His first fight in the promotion last year, with all the injuries and the setbacks he's had. That's how you go and do it. You go put a statement. You finish the guy with something uncharacteristic, because that elbow is a little uncharacteristic. And that's what you do. You put a stamp on it.
Do you know what though, mate? He was. I spoke to him in the pre-fight press conference, and I asked him, "Is this because Adam Palasa said either he'll go or I'll go kind of thing?" And I said to Stuart Austin, "Is this going to be a sort of stand and bang affair because it's not really your game in essence, you know?" And he said, "No, I'm looking to put him on his back. That's what suits me. That's what works for me. That's what I want to do." And he didn't do that. He kind of stood toe to toe. They had a bit of a war. He got clipped with some heavy shots. He was fatiguing in there, but he had some crisp hands, mate. He was landing some nice big shots, and had it not been the elbow, it might have been a right hand because he was landing on a regular occurrence. When he landed that elbow, it was all over. The referee should have jumped in then because Adam Palasa practically face planted the canvas. I mean, Stuart joked afterwards that he hit him again on the ground and pound and woke him back up, and then had to knock him out again. But then to move from that into the choke, it was just it shows composure, and it shows a high level skill set to just be able to go, I've just finished this guy, and then be like, fuck, I've not finished this guy. I'm going to finish this guy a different way. Then he was brilliant. He was calling for the title shot. He's going to get the title shot next, and thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got Hatif Moel to get through, and I mean, to be fair, I watched that title fight in Cologne. I was there. I watched Moel versus Todev, and I texted Stuart the next day, and I said, when you get back in, you're a problem for these guys, both of them. And obviously, when I spoke to Stuart in the lead up to it for Combat Sports UK, he said he hasn't watched any of his fights and he knows exactly what he does. So that's going to be similar to this one. Moel's a bit of a plodder. He's a bit bigger than Palaz. But I think Stuart will be a problem for him with the grappling and obviously with these hands, like you said. So Get that man the
Do you know
belt. Get him
what?
over here to Germany and Stuttgart so I can go and watch it.
Do you know what I thought watching Stuart Austin? I thought, why is the heavyweight division in the UFC so limited if there's characters or fighters like Stuart Austin out there? Because with all due respect, there's an awful lot of heavyweights in the UFC that he would absolutely take to pieces.
Mm.
Absolutely take to pieces, not just beat marginally. He would ruin a lot of those guys in there. And it kind of makes me wonder, like, are they aware of the talent in whether it's the UK or Europe or wherever? Because they're not dipping into it enough if they are. There's too much focus on American heavyweights or Brazilian heavyweights or
Yeah,
whatever else. Because let's not forget this guy beat Tom Aspinall.
yeah, yeah. He did beat Tom
You
Aspinall.
know, it's not, he's no joke. Would he beat him again? Look, Tom Aspinall's a different Tom Aspinall now. I don't think even Stuart would hide away from that. But the bottom line is he's a top heavyweight and deserves to be fighting for the gold. And I think he
Yeah,
will get it next. I don't see him losing that matchup next out.
yeah, I totally agree. Stuart Austin definitely to be the champ, and then see if he wants to carry on. All instances in the press conference where he's not so keen on it anymore. So we'll do the last fight on the main card, and then our picks each from the prelims. I'm gutted about this one. Max Holzer, fantastic performance, but beating Corey Fry in the second round by rear naked choke. I'm a huge Corey fan. Love his style. Loved what he did in Cologne. And yeah, I'm just gutted. But what a performance from Max Holzer. Way to go out and do it.
Yeah, well, as you know, I spoke to him earlier on today, and Max Holzer is a great guy. He was lingering around just like a nomad around the arena, just got his hood up and his headphones in, just walking around, watching some fights, watching the cage get set up, just sat by himself. But I think I'm partially to blame for Corey losing this fight because when I saw him at the press conference on the Friday, they jumped into the lift to go back to the rooms and get some food, get hydrated, get whatever else, and I jumped in and pressed ground floor when they were wanting to go up. So sorry, Corey, for that.
You're the butterfly effect.
I basically dropped him down. He says, "Have you just took us to the ground floor?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Fucking hell, thanks for that." I said, "I'm sorry, mate." But no, he was, Corey looked massive in comparison to Max when they were toe to toe. Max has obviously come up from bantamweight and now fighting at featherweight. He's so strong. He's so strong. And the way that he came out and stood toe to toe, that was the most surprising thing for me. And I asked him about that earlier, but he stood toe to toe with Corey Fry. And I thought that's a mistake because Corey will clip you and it'll all be over. And he didn't. They just stood toe to toe. They exchanged some stuff. Corey was phenomenal with escaping some of the submissions and some of the scrambles that he had.
Yeah.
But Max just looked calm, composed, wasn't rushing anything. He was just brilliant, mate. And he's the other one that I would say I'm extremely excited about because he's undefeated. He was relatively an unknown coming into this, but picking up and winning that kind of style against Corey Fry, he's a problem, mate.
And he's only young, isn't he? 22, 23?
22 years old, yeah. 22 years old.
And he'll get ranked off the back of that because Corey was ranked in at number 9. So he'll pick up a ranking off the back of that. And there's some tasty fights in that division. You know, you've got Shoaib Yousaf in there at 4, Samson Hite at 2, Jakob Dornau, David Moon. There's some good fights in there in that division. You know, hopefully Corey stays in that top 10. And he gets a decent fight. So jumping for you first, what was your pick from the prelims?
I think the standout performance from the prelims for me was probably Jake McGew. I thought the way that he went out and did that was just phenomenal. He didn't batter an eyelid to come back from getting defeated the way he did the first time round. He looked really sharp, mate. Really sharp, really in control, really quick. So I think I've got to give it to Jake McGew. Obviously, the big standout name in there is Dennis Frimpong. Dennis is phenomenal as a guy to be around all week. Same again. You know, he has a bit of he talks a lot of shit. He winds his opponents up. He plays this particular kind of role almost. And it's not a role because it's who he is, but he's also a real nice, genuine guy, as is Jonas Magaard. But I thought Dennis looked class. He was won it quite decisively. Could have probably finished it on a couple of occasions, just wasn't able to pull the trigger. I missed the Edward Kexel one, mate, because I was interviewing Jake McGill.
Mhm.
Dan Bainbridge was a local guy that got his hand raised. That was a hard fought win, but
That was a nice win, yeah.
and then the other one there, and the only one I want to mention is the Nathan Hayward one, mate, because Nathan Hayward looks, I mean, he talks great. He looks like the finished article insofar as he's got good movement, got good
Mhm.
hands, got good kicks, good footwork, manages a distance really well. But you know, sometimes when you're just in there with a heavier hitter
Yeah.
and there's nothing you can do about it, that's kind of what I got from this because he was keeping the fight at range and he was winning. And then he'd get clipped. And then he was choosing to wrestle because he'd been clipped. But he's
Mhm.
not the wrestler. So he
Mm.
was coming out second best on those occasions and getting clipped on the way back out as well. And he put on a hell of a performance, mate, but he just fell short on this occasion. And he said afterwards, he says he just hits hard as fuck. And that's what Nathan said.
That's it.
He said Roman Ballas just hits hard as fuck, and that's all there is to it. He says he hit me, and
Yeah.
I thought, fuck, let's wrestle. So
Yeah.
he was quite open and honest, but he in particular, out of everyone, I'm not saying there was no one else that felt this the same way, but out of everyone on this card, I got the impression that he was hurting the most.
Mm.
But his attitude was phenomenal because he was in front of his own people, in front of his home crowd, and he was just the mentality was phenomenal. I asked him, I said, is it a bit of a bittersweet week for you, this? Because obviously, you know, the result's not gone your way, but you've had all this in front of all your friends, family, your own people and everything else. And he said, it is. He said, it's going to be hard. It's going to take me some time to get over. But he said, this is this game, man. He says,
This is
we
the
brush
fight game.
off, we train and we come back.
This is the fight game. Yeah, I'll second that. I was going to go Dennis Frimpong for
Mm-hmm.
my kind of pick of the prelims. I loved his performance. So when he's playing, when he's doing that style, when he's able to do that, I think Jan enabled him quite a lot. I think those shots to the body were hurting big time. And I think Dennis
Yeah,
definitely could have got the finish if he'd have kept going there with those teep kicks,
yeah.
and especially the hook from the uppercut. I mean, you could see it on the camera. He was not in a good way. But a phenomenal card.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Phenomenal experience for yourself getting to go down there. And
Yeah.
roll on Birmingham for you, roll on Oberhausen for me. If you haven't, it's Channel 4. Check out Octagon whenever you can. It's free to watch. It's Channel 4, free
Mm-hmm.
MMA. The next one will be Saturday, the 9th, I believe, of February, whatever that next Saturday is. So tune in. Nathan, as always, thanks for your time, mate, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, no, thank you, mate. A quick one before I jump off. Shamrock's back. George Hardwick, not Hardwick, George
James.
Staines is back too in Birmingham. We'll see you then.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.